Welcome to the Mindful Messenger Show, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Media Project. My name is Amanda Johnson, and today we are talking to Reverend Ahmondra McClendon about mindful personal growth and transformation. Welcome, Ahmondra. So glad to have you here. Reverend Ahmondra McClendon is an ordained interfaith minister, spiritual advisor, spiritual speaker, published author, and certified master facilitator. She is currently earning a Doctor of Ministry at New York Theological Seminary. She believes all individuals have the potential to overcome personal challenges, and she has faced some of her own, domestic violence, and overcome addiction and depression on her life journey. Her philosophy is that everyone is entitled to be happy and live purposeful lives. Spirituality is our birthright and should be claimed. Through Circle of Consciousness, her online global ministry, Reverend Ahmondra, inspires individuals to reach their highest potential. Whether she's delivering stimulating sermons, transformational workshops, or impactful trainings, she recognizes limitations aren't permanent. Regardless of their religious traditions or non-religious backgrounds, all individuals are divine beings. I am so thrilled to have you on this show. I feel like even as I'm sharing your introduction, I'm just like vibrating. I can feel what's going to happen today.
Thank you. Well, I have no idea what's going to happen, so I'm
you and me both. we are accustomed to going off script. So what people, that was the formal bio and introduction, and the informal one is that Ahmondra and I met 10 years ago now, 10 years and a few months ago. And she was a master facilitator in a training program that I was in. And she was a pivotal part of my journey of transformation, helping. As soon as I slammed into my story and all of the limitations that were like, well, I know you want to get this message out, but if you tell that story on stage, you're going to fall apart. You were the one that I saw when I looked up, and you held sacred space for me for many years in that program and since. So I'm really, really excited to have you here today.
It's good to be here. I feel so great to be sitting here with you. It's been a long time.
I know. And, one of the fun things I think about this show for me is that we have these conversations regularly, we pick up the phone or we're on Zoom and we have these deep conversations, and I always get off and think, man, if only other people could hear the wisdom that just got dropped, right? So for me, this is really exciting to have this show because we get to have more of those conversations and let people eavesdrop and get what they need out of it too.
That is
so. So your bio says a lot, but what I want to know is when was it and where were you when you got this idea to change the world? What did that look like the first go around?
When I was born. It's funny. I went back in my mind, I was thinking about the answers, and it's funny because the actual idea surfaced in my mind after I got back from West Africa, Ghana. I went to Ghana and studied for a year, all of 2001. And when I got back in 2002, I heard this voice that said, you should be a speaker and you should be a writer. And I just ignored the voice. Like, I'm a social worker. This is what I do. I have a great job. But someone called me and they had a new magazine coming out and they asked me to write an article. And I was like, okay, I'll write the article, and I wrote it. And the editor was like, this is great writing. I didn't have to edit it. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty interesting. Then I got another call from someone that asked me to be a commencement closing keynote speaker at College of Alameda graduation. So I went and I spoke, and I wrote this I thought it was a speech, but it turned out to be a whole curriculum called Flight for Your Life. After those two events, I was like, whoa, I can speak and I can write. But I also realized there was this creativity inside of me that burst forth and just wrote this whole curriculum, Flight Plan for Life. So it was at that point that I started telling people, oh, I'm a professional speaker and I'm a professional speaker, working every day as a social worker. And I got this still small voice inside saying, you should retire from your job and do this permanently. Well, I was only 50 years old, too early for retirement in my mind. And I was like, yeah, okay, I could do that. But the day that I had to turn in the retirement papers, I froze. It's like, I put them in the desk drawer. I can't do this. Oh. And what happened, I was listening to all the things my coworkers were telling me. You can't retire. You're too young. The economy's bad. You're going to get out there and wish you hadn't left your job. And I sat there and I just said, Lord, you got to help me. Because I didn't know what to do. And this coworker walked up to my desk, and we used to call her the prayer warrior. And I told her what was going on, and she said, you know, no one can take your blessings from you, but you can give them away. If God has told you that you need to retire, then there's something waiting for you on the other side. You need to do it. I trusted her. I got up, I turned in the papers, and I kid you not, on my phone, there was a message I had been avoiding for like, just 2 days, just not answering it. I answered it, and it was a good friend saying, I just signed you up to be a speaker on a national tour. The national tour starts in 3 weeks. Can you do it? My job ended in 2 weeks. In 3 weeks, I found myself on a stage with professional speakers, had never spoke a day in my life. That day I was a professional speaker. The tour lasted for 8 weeks and I never looked back. I did discover that that platform was not for me. I discovered that I'm more of a one-on-one inspirational speaker as opposed to a speaker on a big stage that speaks and then just leaves. And so from there, I went on the hunt to find where can I deliver my talents. And from there, other things happened, and I ended up being a facilitator, a coach, and working one-on-one with individuals all over the world, doing core value training. And that's how it took off. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, and I know that it's just so fun to talk to people about how these inspirations come, because you remember mine. I mean, it hit me like a lightning bolt. It was, this is your life now, and this is where you're supposed to go, run. And, but other people have this, this bubbling or this voice or this call to write, and they don't really know what it is that's pulling them forward. So I love hearing those stories and what it turns into.
Exactly.
So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, most of the time, I find that we allow the thoughts that run through our mind to stop us. And I have learned to ignore my mind, and when my eyes get together, they create stories that are not true. And just because it runs through my head doesn't mean that it's true. I have to actually sit and decide what I'm going to allow in and what I'm not going to allow in, or what I'm going to allow someone to tell me, and if I'm going to move on that or not. And a lot of that has to do with understanding who I am and what my unique gift is. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's perfect, because my next question is, what were some of the challenges that came up? There's all this, divine opening up of what was possible for you and a stage and the opportunity to write. Like, these invitations come to us, and then usually at some point we meet up with a wall or a trap door or something that really challenges our thinking about what we're supposed to be doing.
My biggest challenge has always been to allow myself to get trapped in someone else's dream.
Ooh, wait. Say that again.
I get trapped in other people's dreams.
That is so good.
I love to help. I love to be supportive. And so I'll just throw myself in to supporting someone, and helping someone and use all my talents there and forget about me. And what ends up happening is I end up putting all my energy here and I enjoy it, but I look up and they've got this huge, wonderful dream they're living into, and I'm this helper bee. And I have these huge, wonderful dreams also, but I have allowed them to just sit by the side. It's great to help individuals, and I do it all the time, but I have limits today. I have limits on how far I'm going to go. And I'm real clear about who the person is I'm working with. Because just because I start working with someone today, it doesn't mean that in 3 years, they're going to be in the same space that they were in when I started working with them. And I had to learn to say, I'm going to move on now, and not feel guilty about it, not feel bad about it, to know that there's a time for you, it's a time for me, and it's a time for those who are out in the world. And I have to make sure that this unique gift that I have been given gets out there. So where I am in my life today is standing in my dream. Still helping individuals, but helping them from inside of my dream.
I love it. That's so good. It's so rich, because in the training program that I met you in, the same thing happened to me. I say that all the time whenever I'm speaking about, you know, I remember getting in there, and it was something that it was a population that I loved to be with and I loved to support. And I had a community all of a sudden and a team of allies and people that I could have real conversations with. Yeah. You know, why would you leave something like that when the rest of your life isn't that? You know, it's so exciting to have those opportunities. And I find that a lot of messengers, you know, as they're pursuing this next thing, right? They go take a training course over here. They go learn this modality so that they can teach other people or their clients later. And then all of a sudden they look up a few years later and they're like, what happened? Why am I still here? What happened to my thing? And that thing always comes back to knock on the door. And for me, it came back in the form of, you know, the economy falling out from underneath me. So all those contracts that I had out, just where'd they go? Well, I better figure out what this little voice in my head saying true to intention has been trying to.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but I think that piece is so, it really is, it happens to so many people. But I also use what I learned from you and the others in that program every day. So there's like this, right? There's like this, oh, I got trapped. But there's like this moment where I got full of everything that I was there to get and give. And I probably should have moved on at that point. But oh my gosh, because it wasn't just that program, there's so many others that I've played in and thought, wow, if I hadn't done that for 2 years, or I hadn't done this for a year, I wouldn't have all of this to bring to this moment.
Each one of those experiences has us grow. And our personal growth and development depends on us stepping out and playing in different playgrounds. Just not forgetting where our playground is. And coming back to it. When I look at another area that I get challenged in a lot is individuals see me, they hear me, and they have great ideas for me. And they give me this information, and I have to stay on track with where I am. I had a professional speaker tell me the other day, we were talking, and I was telling her where I'm at right now and what I'm building. And she's like, you know, sometimes you just have to jump out there. And I started smiling and I said, I don't do jump out there well. I have to plan. I work well in clarity. I don't work well by just holding on the seat of my pants. That creates confusion and anxiety for me. And so I have learned that it's okay for me to take time to plan and to do things the way I need them to be done. I know not to get stuck there. That's why I have coaches around me and other professionals that are supporting me in moving forward. But just because someone gives me an idea doesn't mean I have to go there. I used to go to business seminars or take this class and take that class and try to fit myself into that mold. And it wasn't a fit for me. But I got great ideas that I could take and bring back over here where I'm supposed to be fitting. And that was the greatest lesson that I learned, is that just because someone shares something with me, I don't have to move on it because it worked for them and they're successful. Because I'm going to be successful also, but over here in my space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that one of the most important lessons that I learned from you over the years is that piece of getting really connected to yourself and your own voice, because all the lessons that we talked, self-talk and everything. I mean, it was like, how do you make all of the noise stop so that you can really get connected to that voice? So when in your life have you allowed yourself to get to that point, and how have you kind of walked your way back to the place where you can get back to your center?
Whenever I have been in a place and I start feeling uncomfortable, mm-hmm. I know it's time for me to leave that space. But I also know there's a particular way I need to leave that space. And I was in a situation where I was very uncomfortable and I kept wanting to leave. For years, I wanted to leave. And I was like, can I leave now, God? Can I leave now? And the answer was always no. And that went on for years. But what I discovered is that all that time where I was feeling uncomfortable, I was actually discovering who I was internally. Like every time I felt uncomfortable, I got to look at me and see, why was I uncomfortable? Okay, that's not something I would do. That's not something I want. And then when I did walk off, I didn't walk off in anger or animosity. It was just a smooth, okay, it's time for me to leave now. But when I walked off, I had all of these valuable lessons that I had learned that I would not have learned had I just walked off in a huff or left prematurely. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times I just pay attention to how I feel. If I begin to feel uncomfortable, then I begin to question, okay, so what's going on? Is it time for me to leave? And then I sit and I wait for the answer. The answer always comes to us. You're right about the chatter in our head. Is the talk in our head so loud that we don't hear divine guidance? Because it's being given to us all the time. But we have to learn how to quiet those thoughts. They're never going to go away. We just have to turn the volume down so we can hear the other voice. Mm-hmm. And that's all I've done. The voices are still there. I laugh at them now because the other voice is louder than I call them the big voice. I've turned down the volume and the small voice now speaks louder.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember when I got to you, the really loud voice was telling me that I would never be a good speaker. Remember how I introduced myself? Hi, I'm Amanda, and I like to empower people from behind my computer screen. Well, look, I'm behind my computer screen, but it's going out to who knows how many people, right? So we've come some distance. But I just remember all of the chatter that would go on every time I would try to get up and be in front of people. And so how do you, I mean, because I always say that you and the team that you were working with at the time completely ruined me for going to other events and listening to speakers. If I'm honest, right? Remember how many of those texts I used to send, like, oh my goodness, because you guys were the best, engaging and
Oh, that's funny.
you ruined me. But I mean, how do you do that? Can you talk a little bit about how do you really, because I mean, I remember just being in the audience and I was supposed to be learning something. I was supposed to be watching the technique of something, and then I was like, oh no, I'm in the process and the exercise here. What happened? How do you do that?
Wow. I have learned how to let go and allow something bigger to move through me. When I stand in front of a group, it's all about you and what it is you need. It's not about me. And the moment I step out of me into you, something else takes over. I spoke yesterday in church. I gave the sermon and it was hilarious. I was laughing as I was giving the sermon because it was funny to me. And afterwards, they were coming up and they were saying to me how great it was. And I kept reminding them that it was, yes, it was me. And you could see me, I was delivering the message, but I had opened up and allowed something bigger than me. Some people call it God. Some people call it divine intelligence. Some people call it spirit. I call it our divinity. We all have it. And when we can relax enough to allow it to move through, it shows up in the room and it speaks. And I was looking at my video last night and I was like, wow, that's great. I like that message. Because when I'm there and I'm delivering, I don't always know what's coming out. Things will come out in the perfect order, in the perfect way, just because somebody in that room needs to hear that. And so that's the space I stand in. And I do a lot of work on my personal ego, my personal consciousness, so that I am always out of the way. Because it's so easy for us to jump in the way, and just ruin everything.
Are you willing to share one of those times where maybe you didn't know the personal work that was supposed to go in? Because we've seen that so many times. I've done it myself. I remember you rescuing me from several of those where I would just, start to share a story and I just felt my energy collapse, or I felt it bounce off the people in the room, and I didn't know because I was new, and you had to come and rescue me until I learned how to manage that. But what does that look like, that work that you do before to get yourself ready?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the type of message that I'm going to be delivering. I tell individuals, as an ordained minister, it's a whole another world when I'm delivering a message, because when I'm delivering a message from that space, that is totally divinely inspired. So that's one area. When I'm speaking, say, to a women's group, I'm still divinely inspired, but the message is totally different. And the delivery may be totally different also, depending on the audience that I'm speaking to. For me, I always just have to remember, what is it that I am attempting to give? And it's going to be delivered, but how am I going to stand so that it gets delivered through me? And that's the biggest challenge, because I love to think of myself as all of that, and come on. I get a lot of help. But I sit quietly and I wait to hear what needs to come through. And then I deliver it. Now, I haven't always done that. And when I didn't do it, I'd find myself standing in front of an audience saying, okay, so what do I do now? And okay, what do I say now? And find myself going down the road and there's no exit. And I have to back myself back down that road to get out of there. That doesn't happen to me anymore because now I don't go down the road alone. I consciously make sure that I'm walking hand in hand with spirit to go down that road. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you find when you have, other messengers that you're witnessing as they're sharing, or maybe you're coaching them? Well, God knows you've coached me a lot over the years in this department. What do you see are some of the biggest challenges or stories that they're facing?
I think the biggest challenge that I see individuals face is that they haven't quite found out who they are as a messenger. They're looking at someone else that they like. And they're like, I like her. I want to be like her. So they try to go down her road. Or they haven't completely embraced their passion. I have a sign that someone gave me that says, passion is a force that cannot be stopped. Once you tap into your own individual passion, it will never stop. It will continue to push you forward. And sometimes individuals as messages, they haven't quite embraced their passion. They know what they like. But when you embrace it, an energy just takes over and moves you forward. The other thing that I have seen messengers, they get stuck because they want to please someone. They want to please their coach, or they want to please, their family, or there's something out of sight of them they want to please. And that doesn't work. Because your message isn't always going to please individuals. You have to stand in your truth. Now, there's a way to deliver your truth where you don't insult individuals. And there's a way to stand in integrity where you respect where other people are. But you never give up who you are. And so I tell people, first find out who you are, what your passion is. What is your unique gift? What is the message that you want to deliver? When you're standing in that place, you will move forward down the road that you're supposed to go down and not go down someone else's path.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that's part of just the process of learning. I know you worked with little kids for many, many years, right? We know that that's our process of learning, is that we get into an experience and we emulate what we want. We mimic until we get it. But I mean, there have been some situations where I can hear other people coming through my mouth years later. And I'm like, wow, she is still in there,
I know.
It's just another, opportunity for me to say, okay, so I hear that, but then what does that mean to me? How do I say that? What is my specific expression of that?
Yeah. It's delivering your unique gift. All of us have unique gifts. Mm-hmm. And how do I deliver my unique gift? That has been my greatest challenge, is standing in my unique gift and not allowing my mind to take me off somewhere else, or not to judge myself. Messengers, we always judge ourselves. You should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be here, you should be there. No, I should be right here, right now, in this space. Because this is what's working for me right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it doesn't work anymore, right? Like you get to the place where you're working something and it's amazing and you're getting results, and then all of a sudden something changes and you have to make this transition into something else. How do you do that? I mean, what are your, because I've watched you do it over the years.
I've watched me do it too. When I was preparing for you today, I was laughing because I'm an ordained minister. And that was not in my plans.
Mm.
When I received that message back in 2012 to go into the ministry, I was like, you got to be kidding. I don't want to be a preacher. I don't want a church. That, you know. And the message was like, no, no, no. We're not saying that you have to be a church, be a preacher in a church. We're not saying you're going to have a brick and mortar church. We want you to be a minister, or God, not we, but you're going to be a minister to everybody and not in the tradition that you are in. And I stood there like, so what does that mean? I had no idea what that meant. So I do what I always do. I start going around making inquiries of other people. People that I love, people that I trust, I start telling them what's going on. And I told this to a friend of mine who was an ordained minister. And he said, I know what you mean, what you want. You want to be an interfaith minister. And I was like, what is that? And he said, in New York, there's a seminary called One Spirit, and they ordain interfaith ministers. An interfaith minister is a minister that's trained in multiple traditions. But the whole premise is that we're trained to work with individuals no matter what they believe or what they don't believe. And we just stand in a place and hold divinity for them. And so I actually went to New York and was ordained. And I love it. It's not inside of the tradition that I practice, and it doesn't have to be. I get to experience all these other different traditions, and I get to help people tap into their divinity. Right now in our society, so many people are shifting and moving. There's a spiritual paradigm shift occurring on the planet. So individuals have questions, and I get to be in the space to help them find those answers. But you're right. I was going down this road, and all of a sudden it's like, no, you're going this way. And then a couple years later, it's, well, now you're going to go into a doctorate program for a doctor of ministry. I have no idea why I'm in this doctorate program. I just know I'm in it. And I'm doing the work. And it's wonderful because I don't have to know the end results. I just need to know what I need to do the next 3 years is be in this program. And in these 3 years, who knows what's going to emerge and where I'm going to end up. But I know it will be in the perfect place for me. And that's what I help individuals to understand. There's a perfect place for you. All there is for you to do is get on the correct path.
But how do you let go of the old one? I mean, I've watched you for the last, well, I don't even know how many years it's been, but you know, we've had, because your book is called The Gifts of Transitions, one of your books, and I've watched you make transitions, not just with your professional life and kind of this, you know, when we have these dreams, we have the identities that go with the dream, right? I'm going to be the speaker. And so we like live into that identity, but then you're going to go out and be a facilitator, and maybe those things don't cancel each other out, but sometimes they do. And sometimes you have to let go of, like, I was going to be a high school teacher, and I loved that identity. Like, I loved what I got to do in classroom. So when I left that, I thought the world was over. I mean, I knew that there was something, I was staring straight at something that was better for me, that felt better, but I still, how do you deal with those feelings of loss and identity change?
Yeah. I think for me, it has a lot to do with faith. Having the faith that I'm going to be okay, no matter where I land. It's not easy all the time to shift. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of fear that jumps up. But when the fear jumps up, I just know I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I just move forward. And I lean on others. I talk to others. I have very powerful individuals in my world because I know that I may not be able to hold my vision, but someone else that I tell, they may be able to hold it for me until I get there. Or they may be able to just give me some encouraging words to let me know it's okay to go down that road. And that's how I'm able to just make these major leaps. When I look at my life, it's like, this is the life of 5 people.
It's true.
Life of one individual. But it's just because if it's time to move on, I'm ready to go. Mm-hmm. And I used to be told, it was so funny when in my 20s, oh, you're just so idealistic. One day you're just going to grow out of that. I'm still waiting to grow out of that. I just keep leaping.
Yeah.
Into something new, Someone asked me yesterday at church, how was it for me going back to school at this age? And I started laughing. I said it was terrifying. I sat in class for a whole week thinking I was the stupidest person on the planet until I was talking to another fellow classmate. She's like, you thought that too? You felt like that too? Because it's been, 1990 since I've been in a formal classroom? But that only lasted for a minute. Mm-hmm. And even when I was sitting in that, I knew that wasn't the truth. I knew I was just feeling that way. Mm-hmm. It couldn't be the truth because they wouldn't have accepted me into the program. They accepted me. So I had to be qualified to get there. And once she said that and we started laughing, it just dissolved. And then I got focused on what I needed to do to put things in place so that I could do the work. I do not allow myself to live in confusion. One of the things that I did is I completely cleaned out my house. I was embarrassed. I had 10 bags and 2 big boxes of clothes I removed out of my house. I live in a very small apartment. Where was all that stuff at? Under the bed, on top of the shelves. I had to move all of that stuff out in order to clear up energy, to clear up space. Because again, for me, it's about clarity. Clarity of energy, as well as clarity of what I'm doing each time that I'm moving forward. So yeah, it's amazing. Transitions are fun. You just have to hold on and just go with them.
And also, I think part of what you said that I think is the most important, and it's something that, you and I interacting with people and their stories and the intentionality that we have to help people look back at their story and to see how maybe they look back and they only see pain, but when they really look a little bit further, they see all of these moments of grace and divine orchestration. It gets a little bit easier once you are remembering, like, oh yeah, I've been free falling before. I remember this feeling. I got caught right at the perfect moment.
Exactly. It's like you're at this cliff and you step off and you don't fall. Either something comes under your foot or you get wings and you just fly off into another direction. And again, for me, it goes back to faith. Having the faith, I am going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Nothing's going to jump up and with that I can't handle. I'll always be able to handle whatever it is jumps up. I just have to know that and hold that thought when my bottom's falling off. Mm-hmm.
Trust me, I got an area where the bottom is falling off right now too, and I am like, so all of everything that I've learned over the years has to come into play. How do I keep myself in my center and remembering the truth in spite of what the appearances look like? And it's just all, it's like it's revisiting it again and just saying, no, I know the truth and waiting for it to come clear like that.
Yeah.
So when you're in your process of going through a transition or getting ready to move into a new experience for yourself in your messaging, or the way that you're putting it into the world, what are some of those practices? How do you keep yourself at your center? I remember you telling me about giving your ego a job. I think that was you have to tell that story. That was like one of the funniest things. And I think about it all the time. And it's hilarious, but it is a real tool. It is a real, like, game-changing tool.
Oh, that's funny that you brought that up. Okay. I have this part of me that's always concerned with someone else is thinking or saying or how I look, and I know that that's all my ego, and it would get in the way. It would be just so obsessed with something small that didn't even matter. It kept me from being focused. So I gave my ego a job. My ego's job is to dress me. It takes care of my clothing, my jewelry, my makeup. That's what it does. And it is happy because it just gets to create and just, always is on task with that particular job. And then I get to go and I get to do other things. Mm-hmm. And it was, when I first came up with that idea, it was hilarious, but it works. Because I don't concern myself now with being obsessed about something, because ego takes care of its job all the time. Mm-hmm. And I get to go and do other things. And it's worked for me. Yeah. And when I tell people that, they just kind of look at me like, you got something to do. So I stop bothering you.
I love it. I think it is so powerful. And the other part of it, energetically and emotionally, is that you get rid of all of the resistance to it. Like, you could turn that into, well, I shouldn't be concerned about what other people say, or, what does that say about my self-worth that I'm so concerned? Like, instead of all of that stuff, you're like, this thing just needs a job. You just, it's like a little kid who's tantruming, and you just got to figure out what it is that they need to get them to stop tantruming.
Exactly. Here, do this. You love to do that. Okay, I'll give you that to do all the time. Mm-hmm. And I always look good. Everything's always coordinated. And I'm happy.
What other things do you do to stay in your center?
I have a regimen that I put in place years ago. Every morning before I do anything, I have literature that I read. I have a gratitude journal that I write in. And then I have my own personal journal that I write in. And then sometimes I'll go into a quiet meditation. But that time is my time. And even if I wake up and I'm running late, I will take a few minutes to do those activities. Even if I have to take the journals with me, take the readings with me. If I can't sit and read them, I'll take them with me, because that centers me. I have a rule in my house, and it's for me because I live alone. My television does not get turned on before 1 p.m. and it usually doesn't go on until like 3 p.m. There's nothing happening in the world that I need to hear before 1 p.m. If it's something bad, someone will call me and they will tell me. And that's the way I handle that. I also have a regimen of supplements that I take. I pay close attention to my body, and you know that. Mm-hmm. If I feel something coming on, a cold, or I stop everything. But I take supplements every day. I do not allow anything to not to take away from me taking care of my physical being. Because if, as a messenger, as a writer, as a speaker, if we're not physically well, we're not going to be in our power. We're going to be struggling to deliver our messages. And all that's going to do is take us down a road where illness lives. And I don't want to go down that road. I also do not allow individuals to invade my space early in the morning. If someone calls me, they have to wait. They can text me. My phone doesn't even get turned on until after I do what I need to do. And if someone's in crisis, they can wait until 9 o'clock. If they can't, they have someone else that they can call. I had to do that for myself in order for me to show up and be there. So I have to shut down and have that special quiet time. Mm-hmm. I do it when I travel. It doesn't matter. It's a routine that I have in place, and it stays in place all the time.
Yeah.
If I know that I'm going to have to prepare for something, I do not allow myself to wait to last second to prepare. That's not fair to whoever I'm delivering to, and it's not fair to me. I actually take the time to craft whatever message or craft whatever it is I have to do. If someone's calling me and they want me to pray with them, I'll go into prayer before I call them and connect with them. So I have carved out a way to show up in the world for myself and for others. And it's by taking the time that I need to do what I need to do. And I teach people that. In our country, in the United States, we're in this thing about moving so fast, multitasking. One of my greatest teachers, she said, I don't multitask. She said, I do one thing at a time. Because if I'm spreading myself all over the place, something is not going to get done 100%. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do different tasks at the same time, but if you have something major that you're working on, it deserves to have its own time. Even if it's just 10 minutes of concentrated time, it deserves to have that time. Like right now, I work at my church. I'm writing a new book. I'm in doctorate school, but some other stuff I do, just volunteer work. I have to know exactly what I'm going to do, even if I'm going to write one chapter today, even if I'm just going to think about my sermon and take some notes, if I'm going to read one chapter out of a book for school. I just have to be focused, not rigid, just focused. Flexible enough that if I don't feel good today, it's okay, I can sit down. Flexible enough that if someone calls me because they need my attention, I can give them their attention. Flexible, but still focused. So that's, I'm doing this thing called life.
Those are the important things, when people call me and they're spiraling, or when I myself am spiraling and I hear, it's like, why does it feel like someone flipped the switch on my fight or flight? Like all of a sudden, and sometimes it's because I had sugar at the wrong time of day. Yes. Or too much of something. And it's like those types of things, those structures keep us, they do. That's like the cocoon, they keep us safe. So
yeah. Yesterday, my energy when I was getting ready to speak at church was low. Because I had been fighting off a cold over the last week. And I went to 3 individuals in the congregation and I asked them to send energy to me. I said, when I go up to speak, just send energy. They're like, you got it. And the moment I stepped up to the pulpit, this burst of energy just took over. Because we send out energy all the time. And it's okay to request that someone support you. I used to do that all the time, especially when I worked with teens. They loved it. I used to go and I'd pick out a couple of teens, especially the ones that look scary. And I'd say, I need you to help me. And like, what? I'm like, you don't have to do anything. Just smile at me when I get up to the podium. And it would be so funny. They'd be sitting out there. That helps. A smile, it's energy. It's being sent out to us. But we have to learn how to take care of ourselves. We have to learn how to stay centered. Even when the circumstances around us are falling apart, they will fall apart. And you can still be centered, even with everything falling apart around us, because the falling apart only means something is going to emerge out of that. I love the idea of the lotus flower. It emerges out of the mud. This beautiful flower comes out of the darkness to blossom. And when I hold that image, if I'm in the mud, I'm like, it's okay. Because something beautiful is going to emerge out of this mud. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing some of your wisdom today. And before we go, I have a few rapid fire questions. You ready? You ready? Okay. What was the first book or message that changed your life?
I went back in my memory and I found it. It was a book written by Richard Bowles in 1970 called What Color Is Your Parachute? That book is still in publication. His son, I believe now, is taking it over. That was the first book that explained to me about career and about the fact that whatever I designed in my 20s, that I would revisit that in my 30s and probably shift into something else. I read the book when I was like 28 years old. That book allowed me to leave a job I hated, to step out of a marriage that I was unhappy in and he was unhappy in, and to go back to school. It also helped me to craft my idea of the perfect job. When I crafted it, I looked at it and I was like, there's no job out here like this. I wanted to stay at home. I wanted to take care of children. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to make a lot of money. I wanted to play and have fun. I was like, this doesn't exist. It did exist. I opened an infant care center. It was called the Top Drop Infant Care Center. I got to play with babies all day. I made money and I got to stay home. That book changed my life. It allowed me to think outside of the box. I didn't have any models in my life that had stepped into business. All the people around me worked jobs. But that book allowed me to see that, wow, you don't have to stay in this mold. You can step in over here and be happy. So that was the first book. The book that I've been reading for 25 years, it's called The Impersonal Life. And that book was written by a man named Joseph Benner. And that book was what, 1914, it was published. And he originally published it anonymously. He didn't even put his name on the book. And it's a book about personal inspiration, about how you live your life in your divinity, and it has nothing to do with religion. It's totally about us as spiritual beings moving forward. I've been reading that book for like I said, about 25 years now. And it's the type of book that you only get what you need where you are in that particular place. And it's so funny, the book will say, if you're reading this and you don't understand it, it's okay. Just keep reading, because you're not at a place where you're supposed to get this message yet. And over all these years, I'll pick it up and I'll open it and I'll read something. It's like, whoa, this has been in this book all the time, because we're constantly evolving and changing and moving. So what I could pick up last 5 years ago, today I can pick up something different because I have 5 years experience of living. So those are the two books that I just treasure. Yeah.
I love that. I'm gonna write that down and check out that book.
Yeah.
Who is your favorite messenger and why?
There's so many, but my favorite messenger, the one that impacted my life the most, was my teacher in Africa. His name's Brother Ishmael Tete. I lived with him for a year in Ghana. He's an African mystic, a healer, a speaker, a teacher, a writer. He runs a hospital. This man is just amazing with how he has been able to tap into universal truths. Mm. And that's what I learned with him in the year that I studied with him. I was the first American that ever studied with him. And when I first made the request, he was like, I don't know if you can study with me. Americans, they're lazy. I was like, oh my God. And he said, he asked me one question: can you be humble? You have to humble yourself. And I said, I can. And when I humbled myself, I had a master's degree. I threw out everything that I thought I knew and just stepped up to his plate clean. And in a year, the information that he poured into me was phenomenal. His organization is called Conscious Humanity. And you can find him on the internet, conscioushumanity.com. He's amazing. He comes to the United States, not as often as he used to, but he does all kinds of teachings online and things.
That's amazing.
Offer my life.
Amazing. And how can people reach out to you if they're wanting to connect with you and find out more about what you're doing?
It's easy. ReverendAhmondra.com. Reverend Ahmondra @gmail. I also just created last year this sacred Facebook community called Circle of Consciousness. My ministry is Circle of Consciousness Global Ministry. And I wanted a space, a sacred space on Facebook. And so I created this group, and every day I put up an inspirational message. It's for those individuals who want a sacred space inside of that platform and who are about moving forward and may need some inspiration on a daily basis. So that's there available also. Yeah. Perfect. And my book. Oh, my new book's coming out.
Oh, good. Tell us about that.
The book, The Happy Passenger When God is Your Designated Driver. This book is hilarious. All the different driving personas that show up in the world show up in our life. So if you're an angry driver, guess what? You're an angry person. If you're a confused driver, you are a confused person. It's a small book. It's less than 120 pages. And I'm just finishing it up now. It should be out. It was probably next couple of months. It should be out. And it'll have a workbook eventually attached to it, and maybe even some other stuff. But right now, the book is coming out, and it's a fun book.
I can't wait to read it. It's going to be. We've had long, funny conversations about that, the different passengers. So I can't wait. Ahmondra, thank you so much, not just for being here today, but for being who you are in my life, for being part of that sacred space and sacred community that I needed so desperately in order to begin to put my life back together. So I just love you so much, and I'm really glad to be able to share you with this community today.
Oh, well, I want to thank you for inviting me, and I just want to say I treasure you and cherish you for taking on the feat of having me write and publish a book in what, 2 months, 3 months? Some ridiculous amount of time that we did. Thank you so much. You're always there. You're in my heart. And thank you for inviting me to this platform today.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be talking again. I'm sure. I know we have plenty more to talk about. So,
All right.
all right. We'll talk soon.